looking at the person of Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, how do ordinary Nigeria look at him today?
They don't. Unfortunately, they don't. You have to be really old school or really be interested in ancient Nigerian history because that's what it is. The typical young person in the street, you went out there and asked, who was Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe? There are chances you run into Nigerians who'll be like, that name sounds familiar, but I'm not quite sure. I can't place it. And then there are some say, I think he was our first president, but then that's as good as it gets. They don't know so much about him because there are not a lot of opportunities to learn about those kinds of things. And knowing the kind of disastrous leaders that we've had since the military rule started, they would rather not have anything about them known beyond maybe what they look like and the periods that they ruled or whatever they have written down as their legacy. Because it's not gonna look good. You look at Nigeria in the last 30 years. Look at our history; it's too bloody. A lot of bloodshed, a lot of killings, a lot of evil things are part of our history as we have it, and that's not something our leaders would be proud of, considering that there are people who were alive at the independence that are still alive today. So Nigeria is still a very young country, and one would think that the nation will take advantage of that to document our history, to educate the next generation. But no, because I think they understand this better than than the larger population. That if you don't know where the rain starts to beat you, you won't know when it stops. And so there's a calculated effort to make sure that we never find out where the rain started to beat us, so that we can wallow in our mistakes and errors from now till the end of time.
The few of us who believe that our leaders are those who have before us, they are the giant upon who show that we are standing. Their history need to be told. We should continue to do it. We never know when it's going to enter into the right ear because we are not going to be able to change the world, but let's change maybe our vicinity. That might be all we have to do. All right. Now, what do you consider as a real challenge that Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe will face as a leader?
Well, I think unfortunately, some of the main challenges Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe faced are still similar to the challenges that we face today. First, we can look at tribalism, right? A lack of social cohesion. And let's look at what happened between Zik and Awolowo. And then these were parties that have worked together in the past, but then at some point, personal interest comes up. And then somebody says, it's either Zik or me. Oh. My brothers, we can't take this. These Igbo people want to come and take over our place. And then the alliance broke up. And then let's look at Zik going to the north and saying to the Sadawana Sokoto, Samadu Bello, okay, your people and my people are very similar. Can we work together? And Samadu Bello says, okay, I don't see why not. Yes, we can. And then he says, okay, can we forget our differences and move on as a people, one Nigeria? This expression of one Nigeria is is often attributed to Nnamdi Azikiwe, because then he's one of the earlier preachers of the concept of one Nigeria, and then it became even louder during the Biafran War, when at some point he said, "Brothers, let's go back to one Nigeria. Let's stop fighting." So he says to Samadu Bello, "Can we have a one Nigeria?" And Samadu Bello says, one Nigeria is okay, but I think we should keep our differences." And that I think is where the problem is. Because then in those differences that we've preserved, we have our tribes, we have our cultures, we have our religion, we have our languages, we have, because, a country coming together, building together, we would not want to have major languages. We would want to have one language as a people. And then we shun whatever we've been speaking. or at least we can keep those on the side, but then not use them for anything important. We could have said, okay, let's say religion is not important. Practice whatever you will, but then let's be Nigerians first before we're Christians and Muslims and or whatever other thing we decide to be. But no, we chose to preserve our differences because uh, Sir Ahmadu Bello believed in something called the modernization agenda. And then if you checked on YouTube, you'll still find that video where he talks about the modernization agenda. That he's traveled the world, studied, and then he returns to Nigeria. And then there are people, the northern Nigerians were some of the first to become partners with the British. And it's crazy when you think about it now that they actually consider themselves partners. What were the terms of that partnership? Because it doesn't seem like it's benefiting the Northerners in any way. And then the Southeasterners were the last to join this partnership. But then, by the time he was done with his studies, the Easterners were everywhere, and then they were dominating. And he says, if you bring in an Igbo man and give him a job as a bricklayer or as a laborer on a site, 2 years later, come back and he's a foreman. Give him some time, and he's the head of. In fact, he's the owner of the site. And he believed that that is the nature of the Igbo man. He just wants to take over everything. But then I've not met any Nigerian who does not want to take over anything that he can. Everybody wants to take over. Everybody wants to dominate. Everybody wants to succeed. Everybody wants to have more money in their bank accounts. I've
And
not
that
met.
includes the northerner too.
Yes, that includes everybody who is. In fact, everybody who is
That
alive.
includes the European too. That is how they go to South Africa. That is how they go to Nigeria. That is how they go to Australia. That is how they go to the United States.
I've not met a human being in this life that I've said, would you like to have some money and have a good life? And they said, I want to be poor. I've not met a single person. Everybody wants to succeed. Everybody wants to be ambitious. So he says, so what we're going to do is we're going to systemically marginalize the Igbo people, because that's what the modernization agenda is. Said, okay, if we have a contract, we have a job, we have a placement, we have an opportunity, we must give it to a northerner. And if we can't find a northerner who can do this job, we'll give it to a European, we'll give it to a foreigner. And if we can't find any foreigner in the whole world that can do the work, then we'll give it to any other Nigerian that is not an Igbo person,
But on a
but
contract,
on a contract basis.
I watched
Then,
that video and my heart quick.
yes. And that was the premier of the North. Having these thoughts shared publicly, because it was something he believes in, and then that is still what we do in Nigeria up until now. Because then, uh rather than give a construction company owned by an Igbo man a road contract to bring some Chinese people whose language you don't understand, whose culture we don't understand, who will give us a contract written in Chinese and will endorse it without knowing what the contract says. I would bring them in and give them the work rather than empower our own people. So it's kind of, it's like shooting yourself in the foot and expecting to go on a long journey. You never quite make it there. And then these are the differences that we preserved, because they're okay, you know what, let's hold on to our differences. Let's not make forward. Now put that side by side with Rwanda. 1994, Rwanda had a genocide with over 100,000 persons killed. And then it was a tribal dispute. Actually, it looked like a tribal dispute, but then it was politically motivated. And then, the two major tribes had that crazy, crazy, crazy thingy, the Hutus and the Tutsis. But then in 2018, I met a Rwandan for the first time in my life. And then I'd seen the movies about Rwanda. So I said, hey, my friend, how are you doing? He said, good, you're from Rwanda. I said, yeah, I've never met someone from Rwanda. So what are you? Are you a Tutsi or a Hutu? And she looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, no, tell me, are you Hutu or Tutsi? She says, none. We don't have that in Rwanda anymore. And I'm like, what do you mean? Said we abolished tribes after the genocide. We said we don't want to be Tutsi or Hutu anymore. So we just have one tribe in Rwanda, and that is Rwandan. So everybody in Rwanda is a Rwandan, and we all speak the same language. And in fact, they switched they were speaking French as the official language, and then they switched to English. So most Rwandans speak either English or French. Not a lot of them speak native dialects.